The migration paradigm between Latin America and the Western nations is changing, and today we discuss.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
When we think about migration, we usually think people from, let's say, quote unquote, poor countries migrating to quote unquote rich countries. We see it on the United States, where people on the southern border, people from less developed nations in Latin America, starting by Mexico, but also people from Central America, South America, and even from some other places in the world, migrate, quote unquote, illegally to the United States using the southern border. Also, we see this particular movement very similar in Western Europe, especially, of course, on the European Union, where people from Africa and the Middle East, of course, impoverished people from these particular nations, they are crossing the Mediterranean on very precarious vessels and arrive to the shores of Europe and, of course, try to migrate illegally, sometimes succeed, in many nations of the EU, especially in the richer ones like Germany or France and Spain and Italy and so on. Basically, that's what we think when we think about migration. However, the paradigm is shifting. First, on these particular cases that I just mentioned, right now are the most desperate and the most impoverished people, both from Latin America and from Africa and the Middle East, migrating to both the United States, Canada, on a lesser degree, and Western Europe. Because for, let's say, the average citizen in the world, United States is not as attractive as it used to be. Remember, let's start by the United States. They have a great brand, country brand, a legacy brand country, like Andrew Henderson mentions, is that brand is getting worn out on the worldwide sphere because, of course, the United States has a lot of problems, first with economics, inflation, and wages. The quality of the work and the wages has been diminished a lot. So the economy in the United States, on the grand scheme of things, is not as great for the average citizen, for the average U.S. citizen, and also for the average migrant. And now, this is not a shot against the United States, because actually still a great country to live. It's a great country overall. I always say that. However, it's not as great as it used to be. And also, many people from abroad are picking that up. Still very attractive for poor people from poor countries, but it's not attractive for high middle class people from, let's say, less developed nations. And the people, I remember a bunch of people like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I'm talking middle class people, high middle class people that were entrepreneurs and also college graduates, white collar professionals. It was very aspirational to migrate from their home country to the United States, and regardless if they are able to pursue opportunities or not, let's say people that they are doctors or dentists on their home country, they migrate to the United States and become waiters or gardeners, something like that. And just for the sheer fact that they are living in the United States, is quote unquote a good deal. But right now, it's not the case. White collar people, middle class people, more sophisticated people, more entrepreneurial people are just deciding to stay on their home country or migrating to a third country that is better for white collar professionals and entrepreneurs. Right now, the United States is still very good in order to attract the bottom of the barrel of many countries, because the paperwork and the incentives for more sophisticated people, white collar people, high-end people are not there. So instead, these, let's say, more sophisticated, quote unquote, potential migrants, they are not going to the United States. Sometimes they go to Western Europe or even places like Southeast Asia, Japan, China, and Middle East, actually the Gulf, the rich nations within the Middle East, instead, or just staying in their home country and trying to make something happen over there, instead of attempting to migrate to the United States because it's not worth it anymore. Same thing with Western Europe. Both the United States and Western Europe have terrible migration policies. The United States are even worse because in the EU they're very bureaucratic, but still you can make something happen legally regarding migration. However, in the United States it's next to impossible. So the only option is migrating, quote unquote, illegally, going through the southern border. And also in order to get a visa, I'm talking just a tourist visa. In order to enter the United States, the process is very draconian, it's very horrendous, expensive, and with a low probability rate, and also has a lot of discretionary processes going on by US officials and that kind of stuff. So basically people had it, and the people actually that have a good profile in order to migrate to the United States and provide value to the US society, they simply don't want to do it. And of course, the people, let's say the lower end people, they also provide value. They provide their human capital, the working labor, usually have a skill or a trade. So also valuable people, but not as sophisticated on the grand scheme of things. Now, let's talk about Western citizens, people from the United States, Western Europe, UK, since Brexit, I cannot put it on the same group, Japan, Australia, the OECD nations, basically. What is happening with these people is that living in the United States is not as attractive as it used to be, and also has gotten very expensive to live first, of course, in the main cities in the United States, like New York, like Los Angeles, Miami, so on. Same thing Western Europe, cities like, of course, Paris and Berlin and Madrid, and many major capitals of Western Europe are not affordable at all, and these particular locations don't provide as much opportunities as they used to be in the past. So many people are choosing to just leave the country, now having the possibility, since COVID, that the remote work and passive income or being a digital nomad has become first very attractive, but also you have the means in order to actually enhance this particular lifestyle, because right now you can get remote work or remote businesses or e-commerce and that kind of stuff. Now, compared to a couple of decades ago, you don't need to be in a particular city, having a particular business, a brick and mortar business, or a typical job. You can work online or provide goods and services online, lower your costs, increase your return on investing, doing it without being tied up to a particular location. So these people, combined with the higher cost of living in Western capitals, they choose places like Latin America and Southeast Asia, also some places in the Middle East, let's say the Gulf region, places like Dubai, for instance, and other places in the world that are, they give you, either they are cheaper, they have cheaper cost of living, or they give you a better ROI regarding cost of living. For instance, Dubai, that is not cheap at all. However, depending on your particular profile, can provide better ROI regarding networking, tax structure, or even with the same cost of living for a middle-class family in, let's say, United States. Now in Dubai, you can have a high-class standard of living. Now, let's talk about how the law works on these particular nations. First, in Western nations, especially the United States, by far, they have the worst migration law, and that's why they have the worst results regarding migration. So it's next to impossible to migrate legally to these particular countries. Of course, there are processes and channels and some opportunities, but it's next to impossible. I see them all the time. The US citizens complain of why these migrants have to be illegal migrants. And they are not illegal migrants because they want to be illegal migrants. It's because the system is basically impossible in order for these people, especially the new arrivals, to actually be a legal migrant, something I always have to remember, US citizen. Very good. On Western Europe, it's draconian, but it's not as draconian. It's easier, quote unquote, but still very difficult. And in the particular, say, standards, in order to become a legal migrant, when you're starting on those particular countries, those standards are very unreasonable. And that's why most of the migrants, they are illegal migrants because they don't have a legal way in order to become legal migrants, quote unquote. Now, and also you have to understand that the most of the migrants right now in the past, let's say 5 years, are the most impoverished ones, and they are the most desperate ones. The ones we have a very low net worth, also a very low income, don't have particular much assets or particular high-end skills. Mostly they are tradesmen and tradeswomen, of course, looking for opportunities, and very good for them. Of course, I always encourage legal migration, but when a migrant is an illegal migrant, I can understand why. I wouldn't do it myself if I have to become a migrant, but I will understand why. But right now, things are turning around. Funny. Let's start by Mexico. You know that Mexico, since like a decade, the migration that they sent to the United States, that is huge, over 10 million Mexicans and Mexican migrants and Mexican descendants, something of that's kind of the ballpark number. Well, the Mexican migration to the United States is actually negative since a few years ago. So Mexico is repatriating more people compared to the Mexican people still migrating to the United States. Funny thing though. Meanwhile, the US citizens are actually pursuing migrating to the United States. Of course, usually digital nomads, people that have some sort of income or some sort of wealth. And for them, the process compared to the United States, in Mexico, the migration law is way more reasonable. It's getting tired, by the way, I'm not an expert on Mexican migration, but from some colleagues are discussing all the time, especially the ones that are in Mexico. The migration to Mexico is getting harder. It was very easy, still kind of easy, but it's getting harder every single day. So strike when the iron is hot. Very good. Also, the cost of living in Mexico has increased the past few years since COVID. Actually, Mexico was one of the more, let's say, freedom-worthy countries, freedom-friendly countries, with these draconian restrictions during COVID, and that attracted a lot of Westerners. And also the cost of living, you get a good ROI regarding cost of living in Mexico, I have to admit it. In Mexico City, not as much, but still Mexico a beautiful place. Same thing is happening in Colombia, but in this particular case, mostly in Medellin. However, there is some pushback from both of the Mexican people and right now from the Colombian people regarding the quote-unquote gringo migration to those places, thanks to the gentrification and some cultural nuances. So basically, we are seeing a shift of the sentiment and the paradigm between migration from the quote-unquote rich countries to the quote-unquote poor countries. Right now, it has become more attractive to migrate to quote-unquote poorer countries like Latin America, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Eastern Europe, you name it, and not as attractive, at least regarding the quality of the human capital, to most of the Western world. The United States and Western Europe are attracting a lot of migrants still, and you cannot discuss that. However, the quality of the migrant has diminished a lot. I remember 10, 15 years ago, most of the white-collar people, the younger ones, wanted to migrate to the United States. Right now are the most desperate people, the ones migrating to these particular locations. Meanwhile, the middle class is doing something else because they have more opportunities and more possibilities. So it's a funny thing. It's just a food for that video I want to make. Please, I cannot wait to read your comments below.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again and have a nice day.